Then came 1933, and the rise to power of Hitler and the Nazis. No one who had read or heard his words could doubt the danger. Anti-Semitism was at the heart of his campaign, and laws against Jews among the first of his acts. Gradually, inexorably, Jews were deprived of their rights, their jobs, their freedoms. They were spoken of as lice, vermin, a cancer in the body of the German nation that had to be surgically removed. A major humanitarian catastrophe was in the making, and everyone knew it. In July 1938, political leaders throughout the world gathered in the French town of Evian to discuss ways of saving the Jews. None was forthcoming. Nation after nation shut its doors. Millions of Jews were in danger, and there was nowhere they could go. On all the vast surface of the earth, there was not 1 inch Jews could call home, in the sense given by the poet Robert Frost, as the place where, when you have to go there, they have to let you in. The next piece of music is a poem written by one of the heroes of the 20th century, Hannah Senesh, a young woman from Hungary who made Aliyah in 1939. In 1943, she enlisted in the British Army, and in March 1944, she and 2 men were parachuted into Yugoslavia to help save the Jews of Hungary about to be deported to Auschwitz. When they landed, they discovered that the Germans had already invaded. The men called off the mission, but Hannah Senesh continued alone. She was arrested, tortured, and executed by the Germans. She was 23 years old. This was one of the poems she left behind. Kaylee, Kaylee, my God, may these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of man.
שלא ייגמר לעולם החול והים רשרוש של המים ברק השמיים תפילת האדם החול
We get out, I guess about 3 miles out of the town of Dachau, and we start smelling the worst stink you ever smelled in all your life. It was nauseating. Now, that's, I have smelled death. Death is nauseating in the first place, but the smell of it, the stench of it. But this was even stronger than that. And we couldn't figure out what was going on, what that stink was. And we got, the column stopped, and we looked out there, and there was boxcars, and they were lined up. I don't know how many, just hundreds and hundreds of boxcars lined up on, and then we see some bodies down on the sides of them. And we said, so my battery commander stops that part of the, right there, and he says, and he gives us details. I'm a sergeant, so he gives me about eight men, something like that. And we go through those, and he wants us to find out if there's anybody alive in those boxcars, because we see people dead down on the ground, you know. And some of the boxcars were open, some of them were closed. And some of them was these open type, you know, like a, and we see they were piled up with bodies. And the others were this type that had these doors on it, you know, regular boxcars. And we went in there and we broke it loose. They were you know, the ones that were locked, they were chained with locks, and we just shot the locks off and opened it. And then the stink and the smell was something terrible. I mean, it just what we did, we put on gas masks, which didn't help a whole lot, but it did help some. And we saw bodies piled up in there like cattle, just I mean, just one on top of the other. And I didn't know, you know, we didn't know they were dead and any live in there. They couldn't have been live, you know what I mean? But you know, every now and then you'd come across one of them that the eyes are rolled or something, you know, and we'd say maybe he's still alive, so we'd get him out. And in the process of it, we'd pick up one, you know, by the arms and the legs, and some of them were so decomposed that the arms would drop off or the legs would drop off on you. And you just have to pick up the rest of them, just throw them off on the side. Well, you're getting all this gook on you. The smell is terrible. We are throwing up all over the place. I mean, there's no way to explain how something like that could happen. There's just no way. And we got everybody we could out of there. I guess there's around 10 to 12 boxcars I went through. We got maybe 1, 2 that might have been alive. We don't know. And then we went. After that, we got in our vehicles and went into the camp. And the first thing we noticed was coming through the gates. The gates were open, by the way. There were other troops in there. American troops or some other troops was in there. They were still sniping, you know. We could hear, he'd come right past you, you know. And we went on through the camp there. We got into the camp, and the first thing I see is a bunch of these look like German officers or German soldiers, and they were all tore apart. I mean, just eyes were gouged out, and their mouths were gouged out, and they're just. And I asked, see now, I didn't explain. I'm of Jewish descent. I don't know if you knew that, and I could speak a little Yiddish. So Yiddish is very much like German. Germans can understand Yiddish, and I can understand German. And I asked one of the inmates. Now, inmates there was some of them that were absolutely, they were sitting down and they were more dead than alive. I mean, they were nothing but skin and bones. Their cheeks were just, I mean, you couldn't tell. Some of them were just like this here, you know. We didn't know if they were sleeping or dead or what. But we did get enough of them around to take us around. And we asked them about what these, and what had happened is, they said that when the inmates had got word that the Americans were on their way, they jumped these guards and literally tore them apart by hand. Now that's what I was told. And then we went on in. They took us to one of the barracks, and it's a one-story building, long, you know, and there was still people in there. There were inmates in there, and most of them were so weak they couldn't get out of the bed. The beds were just wood frames with, and no mattress. I couldn't see no mattress there, and they were piled one on top of the other. It looked like about 4 or 5 high. You know, one just enough room to crawl in, and they were sticking their heads out. And, you know, some of them were so weak they couldn't even move. And we went in, and I asked them. I says, you know, what are you sleeping on? And they said nothing. You know, nothing there. And we tried to feed them. They had no food or anything, and we tried to feed them. We had some of these C rations with us. You know, these cans of corned beef and stuff like that. And they couldn't eat it. Their stomachs were shrunk so bad they couldn't eat it. So we took water. We took 5-gallon cans of water off our vehicles, and we brought that water in there, and we mixed that C ration and made a soup out of it, and they couldn't hardly eat that. They told me they were boiling roots out of the ground, and they had a few turnips that they'd got someplace, and were making soup out of that, and that's all they had to eat. And we left them. There was bins in there, and they had suitcases in one bin, and another bin they had. They had one of them that I didn't know what it was, and I asked them, and what they did, they saved the hair. They shaved all the hair off of them before they sent them into the furnaces, and they had that hair into containers, and big old containers there, and that's what it was. It was hair. And I found out later on they made mattresses out of that. And they had false teeth. They'd gouged if they had any gold, they'd gouge the gold out,